Yeah, you just.
Aloha. I am so glad to have Amy Bishop here with us today. She is a death doula, and I'm sure you'd all like to know more about what exactly that means. I know I would like to know more about it. And she's had interesting experiences that have led her on this journey. So we're going to have an interesting conversation today. So Amy, tell us, what is a death doula?
Hi, thank you for having me on. I am very much excited for this conversation. And a death doula or an end-of-life doula is someone who provides holistic, non-medical support to the dying and their loved ones. And that might be practical, emotional, or spiritual support. So it can look very different in each circumstance. It can look very different. Depending on what the needs are of the individual.
I know we have a death doula training here on Maui that people come from all over to go to, that Bodhi B and with Doorway into Light
sure.
does it. And I know it's a very popular program. And I each year I've been thinking about going to it, and then all this pandemic stuff happened and everything changed. So
yeah, Bodhi B is very well known in the community too. I'm sure it's a great program.
It is. He's a fascinating person.
Yeah.
So what led you to choose to do this, to be a death doula?
So a lot of my own personal experiences led me here. My first really strong, significant encounter with death happened in 1993 when my sister died unexpectedly. And prior to that, I had lost grandparents. I'd lost an uncle. I think I'd lost an aunt. Can't remember if I had at that point yet, but I'd had some losses in my life, but not anybody that impacted me like the sudden loss of my sister. It was such a shocking experience. And she had at the time a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old. And I just found myself feeling like it was the first moment that I really felt like I understood that life is not given, that it's not a promised thing, that, and then it did. And then there was a feeling of a lack of safety for me, because I just didn't, we don't know what the future brings. And so I learned that lesson pretty early. And then if you fast forward a few years, my father died from a little bit longer prolonged experience. When he died, it was sad. It was so hard because I was very close to my dad, but it wasn't unexpected. And there was a degree of relief for him, for his suffering. And then about 7 months after he died, one of my best friends died. And she died a lot like my sister, very sudden, very unexpected, similar kind of circumstance. And so again, I was hit with that reality that nothing is given. And she was young, she was healthy, seemingly very healthy, 31-year-old. So I kept getting these lessons in loss and in grief, and, would read about grief and would read about how to support yourself through those processes. But in the meantime, people would say all the wrong things to me, things that felt like all the wrong things. And then some years went by, and we fast forward now to 2016, October 2016. So just about 5 years ago, just a little over. And my mom died. And it was like my dad, it was a longer, slower decline that was, difficult to watch. And I was very clear. I was her power of attorney. So I was very clear on what her wishes were and what she would want. And so when it came time to make some decisions, I had to step out of what I felt for myself and the fears that I had and the sadness that I had on my own, and think, what would my mom want? What would she do if she could speak for herself right now? And I consulted with my living brother and sister, and we were all on the same page, because my mom had made no bones about it. She was very clear with her wishes, and she also had documented them too. So my mom died in the end of October of 2016, and just over a year later, my other sister died. And she was the twin of the sister who had died in 93, and they died one day apart and 24 years. I had spoken with her the day before she died, which was the anniversary of our first sister's death. And, we had spoken and been like, oh my gosh, can you believe it's been 24 years? It's crazy. It's such a long time. And we spoke about her and kind of reminisced a little bit. And then the next day I got a call from my nephew saying that my sister had died. And it was just another one of those blows that hits that how is this possible? Then about 5 or 6 weeks after her death, my brother's health took a big dive down. He was already having some health issues, but he went into kidney failure and had to go on to dialysis. And so he was on dialysis, and we were grieving. And shortly after that, I remember heavily crying, sobbing at home, and saying to my husband, I'm supposed to do something with all of this grief. I don't know what it is, but I'm supposed to do something with it. And I didn't do anything with it because I didn't know what it was. And then in May of 2020, the year that we thought that I would possibly be donating a kidney to my brother, he died. And it was a rough year for everybody that year, but I felt like it had been a supremely rough time for me, as he was the final member of my immediate family. So of the 6 of us that lived in a house together, I have half siblings from my father's first marriage, but the 6 of us were in the same household growing up, and I was the only one left. Everybody else had died. And I just knew that my life needed to take a turn. I had already started that. So after my sister died, after I had that moment where I was like, I'm supposed to be doing something with it, I would say probably another year went by. She died late 2017. So it was probably, as a matter of fact, I know when it was. It was about a year later that I came across the term end-of-life doula, and not knowing what it meant, I Googled it, because that's what we do. And as I was reading about this, I was like, oh, this is the thing. This is the thing I'm supposed to do. It just felt like that. Like it was a very clear, like, here's your answer. So then it was a matter of finding the right program, finding a training that I could do, finding how do I do this thing. And so I had become an end-of-life doula by the time my brother died. But I was a newbie. I was new, and I don't think I was ready to take on being an end-of-life doula for him, partly because I think we were all in a bit of denial about how sick he was. His death seemed sudden to me, which is kind of crazy now that I look back, and I realize like he was on dialysis, which is life-sustaining treatment. But I think we all thought, let's just get him through so he's a little bit stronger. And then we were in the process of all the tests that need to happen before somebody has a transplant. And he didn't make it. So when he died, I felt like I had better tools because I had more training, and quite honestly, I'd been through so many losses by that time that it was kind of, my grief process was like, oh, right, this is about the time that this happens. Oh yeah, these feelings that I'm having right now, yeah, I remember this from before. Even though it's all different, it feels completely different every single time. And there's no two experiences that are the same, whether your own experiences with loss or your experiences, your shared experiences that you have with another person. For instance, my brother-in-law and I, our experiences were going to be totally different because our relationships with the person who died are totally different. So that's a very long version of how I wound up in this work. I knew that I wanted to be part of normalizing the conversation around death. I wanted to be part of normalizing conversation around grief. I wanted to be part of helping people have a better understanding of things that they can do and say, and things that they shouldn't say to someone who's recently experienced a loss. And so that's my mission. That's where I am.
Yeah, I understand having so many different situations with death. I've done that myself and each one of them is totally different. And completely. And it just seems to me like it would be wonderful to have someone like you, like an end-of-life doula, who could kind of hold our hands along the way. I know Ram Dass also lived here on Maui. Yeah. And one of the books that he wrote not too long before he transitioned was Walking Each Other Home. And I see the death doula role kind of as that walking each other home. And
that's right.
I discovered with dealing with my loss that it was very important for me to not dwell on it so exclusively that I would be down all the time and not really engaged in my life anymore. And I started working on finding ways to be happy and how then I could help other people to be happy. And I know you've mentioned that the importance of happiness, and I'd like you to talk to that a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. So by nature, I am a pretty happy person. I've had a nickname Sunshine by various people in my life, including a doorman and at one of my clients' buildings years ago in New York City. My other work prior to this was I still do, but teaching yoga and fitness. And so, seeing different clients. When I lived in New York City, there's one doorman who used to always call me Sunshine. So various people in my life, that's been their name for me. And it's been kind of funny because in the last few years, especially in the last 5 years, when in with my mom, my sister, and my brother, I also experienced the losses of my favorite aunt and uncle who were married to each other. So it was literally every year someone died, every year. And I felt like anything but sunshine. I was like, what? There must be a rain cloud over my head that this is what keeps happening. But I am also, I think part of it is how I was raised. My mom, especially, but both my parents, raised us to understand that death is a part of life, and that this is just a cycle, that it's normal and natural. My mom was ahead of her time. I really do believe that. She really, she used to talk about it very, very, I don't want to say blunt, but just very straightforward, very matter of fact. There were no euphemisms. She despised all the euphemisms around death. Couldn't stand them. So there was no passing away. There was no, in a better place, that sort of thing. Somebody dies. She'd just be very straightforward. No, they died. Okay. And so I grew up with that, and understanding that, it's go for a walk in nature. You will see new life, you will see end of life, you will see die, you will see all of it. It's part of our world. And I don't know that it's even necessarily, some days it's a very conscious decision, like this isn't going to take me down. I can't, I'm not going to live a life that is so sad and unhappy for the rest of the time that I have. I think that's attributed to many things. I think part of it is that's not what anyone in my family would want. They would be very upset if that were the case. But of course, you can't say that to somebody who's grieving, because they can't snap out of it. You can't just suddenly go, come on, they wouldn't want this. Smile, be happy, because you're feeling the way you're feeling. But I think some of it's nature. I think some of it's nurture. I think some of it is making the decision to continue to live and to choose what is going to bring you happiness, and to find other meaning and purpose. And I don't think that you can find meaning or purpose right after someone has died. I think it takes time. I think, when you're in the midst of heavy grief, that's not a time that you're going to be able to be like, but the silver lining or what I learned, it's not there yet. That just takes more time. But I definitely think that there is some decision towards that as well. You also have to decide for yourself how you want to be, how you want to show up, how you want to carry on. Yeah.
When you are working with the people that you deal with as a death doula, is there something in particular that you can do to lift their spirits, give them a little focus on something they could do to be happy?
I think the main thing that I try to offer when I'm working with someone, whether they themselves are the person who is dying or they're a loved one of someone who is dying, I think the main thing is honestly to be quiet, to hold the space for them and allow them to express whatever the feelings are and meet them where they are. Not to try to talk them out of it, not to try to put a smile on it. None of that works. And so I think the main thing is really meet them where they are, give them a chance to speak, reflect back what you've heard, let them cry, let them be sad. Because so often I think what we find in our culture is that we don't want to see somebody else in pain. We don't want to see them suffering. We don't want to see them sad. So we're like, here's a tissue and here's this and look, what about this? And look, let's just go for a drink, or let's go have some fun, let's go watch a movie. Let's go. And we try so hard to move away from the pain instead of just saying, tell me how you're feeling. Tell me, what you're experiencing right now. I'm curious and I want to know and I want to hear. So I think that's the main thing. And honestly, I think that's the thing that when people are given a chance to express how they're feeling, what they're experiencing, that's the greatest shift for them.
Yes, I've seen that happen. I know that it's not, when you think of happiness, a lot of people think of laughing at a funny movie or, that sort of thing. But there's a deeper, I think more of a sense of joy. I think it's very important that both families and people who are in the act of dying, they need to be heard. They need to feel like they're validated in some way.
For sure.
That makes them happy. It's not the laughing haha happy. It's the deep happiness that I know they're understanding what I said. I know that they're going to take care of whatever it is that I needed taken care of. Because sometimes there's that sort of
Yes.
thing. I know during my husband Ron's last week that he was on this mission to say goodbye to everybody he wanted to talk to one last time. And being in Hawaii, then we just moved here 2 years before that. It was a bit of a challenge.
That's
So
tough, right?
yeah, a lot of his good friends actually came over and spent the week with us, which was quite wonderful. But fortunately, FaceTime was in existence at that time, and a lot of us were spending time researching and finding numbers for certain people for him, and that made him happy that we were doing what he wanted to see done, that something that was important for him. And then he got to have those conversations, and as far as I know, we got everybody on his list. That he actually was able to talk, and people he hadn't talked to in years, but he just really wanted to talk to one last time.
That's really beautiful. That is really special. Yeah. Something you said also triggered the thought for me that, like, I also think that we shouldn't rule out haha laughter. Right? I think that one of the times in life that I feel like sometimes it's difficult for someone who is a survivor of the loss, the person who didn't die, who then feels like, well, how dare I be happy? Yes. How can I laugh when my person has died? You know, when my brother is gone, how can I laugh? How can I? And I think that we need to understand that it's okay. It's okay for us to have permission to laugh, to feel joy, to feel happiness, even giddiness. And it might not be right then. It might, that can take time. Like for a while, you might just not feel like it. That's okay too. But in those moments that you do, it's okay. And there's nothing wrong with you for laughing when someone has died. And honestly, I've even helped people where, even in the dying process, they haven't died yet, even then there's times where we have found laughter, and it's healthy. It's actually healthy. It can feel very contradictory for people. And so I think that's an important thing to understand, that it's both and. It's not either or. It's not just one or the other. You're not either just sad or you're happy. And how dare you be happy? I can feel all of these things. There's a rainbow of feelings that we can have, and they can exist all at once.
That's right. And it's very important for us to give ourselves permission to experience whatever we do experience.
Absolutely.
That it's okay. I was just thinking about
all of it is
all
okay.
of it. That's right. All of it is okay. I was just thinking about a situation where a man was in the hospital and he was dying. He knew he was dying. He knew he didn't have a whole lot longer, but he also was very alert and aware of everything that was going on at that point. And he said something to the effect of, I wish I could go to my own funeral. And someone heard him, and they made that happen. They invited everybody. They got permission from the hospital to do what they were going to do, and they brought in balloons and cake and had a party, and they all told him how much they loved him, and it really celebrated him and the accomplishments he'd had in his life. And by the end of the celebration, the afternoon that it happened, just in that process of that, he had gotten to the point where he couldn't talk anymore. but he was still smiling, and he'd smiled and talked through the whole thing till the end. And then by the next day he was gone, and his family felt so good
Oh,
about doing that for him.
I just got chills. I just got chills. That's so beautiful. It's so, I mean, if I have any say, and sometimes we do and sometimes we don't, but that's how I want to go. We call it a funeral.
Oh, I like that.
The doula term is funeral. Would you like a funeral? Where you know, because it's all wonderful to say all these beautiful things when the person's gone, but oh my goodness, if you have the chance to say them while they're here, how meaningful, and what a gift.
Oh,
you know,
yes.
for each person, not just the person who's dying, but also to know that you've been able to say these things. Yeah.
And I know that part of it is fear, that people fear that the person who is dying is going to be insulted by somebody laughing when he's in the serious position. And they need to let go of that fear, because that's not serving anybody. You need to just do what feels right in the moment to do, and to be positive as you can about everything.
Yeah.
Whatever
I mean, a lot of it's going to depend on the personality of the person. If they were not a very joyful, laughing, ha 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 kind of person anyway, then that's probably not appropriate to be doing it. But if it's me, I love to laugh. It's one of, if I can have that as I'm dying, it's all worth it, Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I won't feel disrespected at all.
That's right. That's right.
No, I've already, my husband, this is such a joke, because I'm always like, when I die, this is what I want. When I die, he's always like, oh my God. I mean, I want fun songs played. I want, I sure do a beautiful reading, do something that is poignant, but also, play some upbeat songs and dance. That's what I would love.
Yes, absolutely. I know my husband Jacques was a professor in college, but he also in the rest of his life was a singer and actor, and loved to do that. And his friends got together and put on a theatrical production in a theater that celebrated his life. And I just thought, oh wow, if he could only be there. And in a way he was.
That's great.
Because he used to have a live radio show back in the days when you did that. He was a lot older than I am. And the live radio show, he would sing, and he had a recording from that we found on an old record when I was going through some stuff. And I took it to a friend who was a sound engineer at the university where I was teaching. And he was able to make it, get it off onto an MP3 or something that made it sound really good instead of like a scratchy old record. And so when people were coming into the room, he was singing.
Repeat that last bit. I lost you for a moment. You said you took it to a sound engineer.
I took it to a sound engineer at the university where I worked, and he was able to fix it in a way that he could record it up to today's standards, so it didn't sound like a scratchy old record. It was a beautiful recording of him singing, and we had that playing in the theater as people walked in, and people recognized that was his voice, that he was singing at his own service.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible.
It was beautiful.
That is really cool.
And people smile for that, and people cried too, but you feel whatever you need to feel is okay. But it was to me it was such a positive thing to do.
Yeah, because sometimes we cry at things that are beautiful too. Sometimes we cry because life is so freaking gorgeous. So it's okay.
Yes, it is. Well, this conversation has been delightful. I'm so glad we got a chance to speak together, and I admire the work that you do. And
thank you.
I think it's wonderful that you're there to do that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think it's so great when people can take something that could have made them so sad for the rest of their lives that they'd be in a bad place and turn it around and make it into something positive. I feel that way about what I'm doing with my Grief and Happiness Alliance, that sort of thing, that people can see that it's okay. You know, we still love the people that died. They're still in our heart. We didn't stop loving them. We can still be happy about having them in our lives.
Yeah. As I said, it didn't happen right away. You know, I lost a lot of people before it happened. So there's no rush on it to be like, well, what am I supposed to do then? What should I be? How should I make meaning out of this? Meaning can take some time, and meaning doesn't have to be this, and it doesn't have to be a huge legacy. Meaning can be a small thing, but it's never small. If it's true meaning, then it's never small.
It's kind of whatever works for you.
Yeah.
I know. I knew about one man whose grandchild had died in the NICU after birth, but not too long after birth, and he so longing to have been able to hold that baby, and he never had the chance to. So he started volunteering at the hospital, rocking babies, and
amazing.
Didn't replace his grandchild at all.
No, of course it doesn't.
But he felt so much closer to the grandchild and to his, I think it was his daughter who had given birth to that grandchild. It kind of brought them all together, and he was doing a beautiful service and something that could make him smile.
And not only, that's right, what a service for those who are in need. Yeah, that's really beautiful.
Well, I am glad that you were here. I look forward to hearing more from you along the way with things that you're doing, and I hope you'll keep in touch with us here.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. I really am grateful.
Oh, I'm grateful to have you here. Gratitude is one of the things that brings me joy. Having lots of things to be grateful for, and today I'm grateful for you.
I can see it. I can see it.
Okay, I'll look forward to seeing the rest of you who are listening next week, and I hope that when you listen to this, you can write some comments on it under the recording so that other people can get an idea of how wonderful this recording is going to be for them to listen to. So thank you very much. Great. And I hope we'll all have a beautiful week. You're welcome.